Hello again, and welcome back to Channel 514, where, as usual, we are continuing our series exploring ancient literature. And last time around, we introduced Homer, and so we are going to now begin discussing the Iliad, book by book. And so, before I launch into a description of Book 1, and some commentary on it, I think I will describe the context. I'll set the scene. So, as we know, probably as we all know, the Iliad is set during the semi-legendary Trojan War, and the Greeks, who are here called the Achaeans, which is a name, Achaia, of course, is a name in later times. Well, it's used in later times to describe a part of Greece, usually a part of southern Greece, and of course, it is also the name of a Roman province that comprised all of southern Greece in the times when Rome ruled the Greek world. But in any case, so when you see that name in the New Testament, for example, Achaia, that's what it means. It means the province. But anyway, here in Homer, it means the Greeks, or it's usually translated as the Greeks, although in many translations they simply leave it as the Achaeans. But it's an interesting fact, and Thucydides makes a note of this in book one of the Peloponnesian War, but that Homer never calls the Greeks Hellenes, he never calls them Hellenes, Greeks, which would be the normal term by the classical period and even today. But of course, Greece today is known as Hellas, and even in antiquity it was known as Hellas. But anyway, here they're the Achaeans, whatever the significance of that is. I won't get into it here, but probably it has something to do with a legendary ancestor figure named Hellene, who was apparently not such an important part of the oral tradition in Homer's own time, and so he speaks of Achaeans, and I believe he uses one or two other terms, and of course the epithet that he uses is the long-haired Achaeans, and so now, and that's something, I'll just note that very quickly, that's something Homer does often when he mentions a character or a group of characters or a place or something, or a river or whatever. Often there's an epithet, there's something to do, there's something attached to it, some descriptive phrase like red-haired Menelaus or gray-eyed Athena or swift-footed Achilles or something like that. But anyway, where we are right now in the beginning, the Achaeans, they have been laying siege to the city of Troy for years, for 9 years. And so all of these different groups, all of these different forces of Greeks, these war parties from different parts of the Greek world, they're all banded together and they're living together in a great camp near the city of Troy on the seashore. And they have a sort of stockade surrounding their camp, and the different groups of them all have their own different areas of the camp where they pitch their tents, etc. And so they've become a sort of people of the camp, and they support themselves partly by raiding the surrounding area, so the islands and different places on the coast. And recently, when our story begins, they have raided a port called Crusay, which it means something like the gold place or something. Uh, there's a word, I forget what the gender of it is and what the ending of it is, but I should have looked that up really. But Crusay or Chrusos or Cruson or something is gold in Greek. But anyway, they've just raided this place, and that's going to be important to our story. But let's read the beginning, the invocation of the Muse, because Homer invokes the Muse, one of these goddesses who inspire artists and authors, etc. So what he says here at the beginning is, and this is again Robert Fagel's translation from 1990, and there are plenty of translations available today from the very old to the very new, so this one I'm just choosing arbitrarily for no other reason really than it's the one that I read many years ago, and so I have it ready to hand. But it begins, "Rage, goddess, sing the rage of Peleus' son Achilles, murderous, doomed, that cost the Achaeans countless losses, hurling down to the house of death so many sturdy souls, great fighters' souls, but made their bodies carrion, feasts for the dogs and birds, and the will of Zeus was moving toward its end. Begin, Muse, when the two first broke and clashed, Agamemnon, lord of men, and brilliant Achilles." So this rage of Achilles, this guy and his problem with his rage, that's going to be the engine of our story. That's going to be the thing that gets everything moving, and the thing we're concerned with first and last in this story. So, and of course the will of Zeus was moving toward its end, so all of these things are going to happen that are part of destiny. That's this word Moira, perhaps you've heard, fate or something like that, this destiny that guides things that not even Zeus can change, really. And sometimes it said not even Zeus can change, fate or whatever, but here it's the will of Zeus was moving toward its end. So the gods, meanwhile, the Council of the Gods, a popular phrase, they are on Mount Olympus, of course, and Olympus is the highest mountain in Greece, but when the scene of our story is Mount Olympus, we're not really to think of just some mountaintop, but of some spectacular place with big palaces and everything, so above the clouds probably. So Zeus is also bringing his plan to fruition while all this is going on. But anyway, the Greeks are encamped in their camp, and so they have recently raided this place called Crusade, where there's a temple of the god Apollo, and the god Apollo is associated with the sun, and with health and sickness, and with light, and with many things really, music, and reason, and logic, etc., but his significance here is largely with health and sickness, and with the sun, and there was an idea in antiquity and in the Greek world, notably, that the sun could make you sick, So Apollo's making them sick. He's shooting his arrows, he is often depicted as a young man. He's generally depicted as a young man and an archer, so he's shooting his arrows, his golden arrows, down on the Greeks and making them sick. And so there's an epidemic among them, or there's an outbreak of sickness among them. And so they believe that this is because, of course, Apollo must have to do with this, and we just attacked his town and sacked his temple, so probably he's angry with us. And so the leader of the Greeks, the king of Mycenae, is this character Agamemnon, and during this attack, he being the leader of them all, of course, he got the lion's share of the spoils, and so he took as a slave the daughter of the priest of the temple, who's called Chryseis, and her father is named Chryses, which I guess means like the gold man or something like that. So, they have a lot of gold, but anyway, he's taken this young woman as a slave, and her father comes to Agamemnon to beg him to return his daughter to him, and Agamemnon, just gets angry with the man, and probably he's also frustrated that this disease is striking his people, so he just drives the man away in anger. And the Greeks the Achaeans, they're worried about this. They think, oh, certainly, we're being punished, so really he should do what that old priest wants and try and get the god to be friendly to us and stop hurting us, but he's not going to do that. So, but eventually Agamemnon, he goes to this character Calchas, who is a seer who stays among the Greeks and acts as a priest and well, perhaps not so much as a priest, but he has some kind of priestly role, but primarily he's a seer and he takes the omens and that kind of thing. But so he reads the flight of birds. I believe that's what he does here. He either offers a sacrifice. Let me see if I can find that here. Whether he offers a sacrifice or looks at the flight of birds. I think he offers a sacrifice actually, but in any case, or maybe neither, but he reveals, as Agamemnon tells him, oh no, Achilles tells him, that's right, let me start this over again. So Agamemnon wants Calchas to tell him what's really going on, and Calchas is afraid that, I can't tell the king what he doesn't want to hear, so he voices this concern, and Achilles, the great champion of the Greeks, he tells Calchas, don't worry about it, I'll intercede for you and protect you. So Calchas, the seer, he tells Agamemnon that it's all his fault and he needs to send this woman back to her father and probably give back the treasure that he took and everything. And so otherwise no deal, the gods just going to keep making our people sick, so. And a note about this character Calchas is that one tradition, and I don't know if that's mentioned anywhere in Homer, but one tradition about him is that he was sort of a turncoat from Troy, that he had fled from Troy because he could see the future and he knew they were going to lose, so he went over to the Greeks. And in Geoffrey Chaucer's poem Troilus and Cressida, he's sort of a villain, I think, and he's the father of the heroine of the story, Cressida, who's this young Trojan woman. But anyway, so Agamemnon eventually kind of relents. He says that he'll give the woman that he took as a slave back to her father, but not without getting another slave woman that he likes, in return. So he demands that Achilles, the great champion, that he give one of his slave women that the Greeks have taken in an attack on somebody, that he give this woman to Agamemnon. And Achilles takes this as an insult there, and so he almost loses his temper and attacks his leader, Agamemnon, which in Homer's thinking would be, an instance of letting his anger get the better of him, but he ends up going back to his tent and he makes a resolution that he's not going to fight for the Achaeans anymore. He's going to just hang back and let them suffer because things will go badly for them without him, probably. And so Agamemnon's men, they come to Achilles' tent and they're taking the slave woman that they want, and Achilles has a young friend, Patroclus, who wants to interfere with them, but Achilles tells him to not interfere with them, and so, probably, I don't remember his exact words, but he's planning, he's going to cooperate with them, but really he's planning how he can get back at them. And so then he goes to his mother, or he prays to his mother, because his mother in our story is a sea nymph, so she's a sort of sea goddess, and she's believed to be a special favorite of Zeus, who's of course the king of the gods of Olympus, So he asks her to intercede with Zeus for him to make things go badly for the Greeks. And Zeus, when Thetis, Achilles' mother, the sea goddess, she goes to talk to Zeus, she asks him to do this, and Zeus at first doesn't like the idea because he knows that his wife, the queen of the gods, Hera, will be unhappy with him about it because she is favoring the Greeks. But Thetis, of course, gets what she's asking for because she's a special favorite of Zeus. So then, I believe, if I remember right, Hera somehow guesses what's going on, and so she reproaches Zeus with it, and he just kind of loses his temper with her and yells at her. And then she goes to her son, Hephaestus, who is a god who is imagined as being lame and as being a blacksmith who makes things for the gods, and he sort of calms her down, or he shows her some hospitality and makes her happy, because he is shown as, he's usually depicted as being Hera's dutiful son, so he sort of eases her temper off anyway. But that would be book one of the Iliad, and let me think if there's anything more that I should say about that before moving on. But our story is set up now that things are going to go badly for the Greeks, because there's been a falling out between their leader and their greatest champion. So their champion isn't going to participate in their attacks on the city of Troy anymore, so probably they're not going to go as well, and maybe there's going to be some big disaster, right? So now that's the setup of our story. So let's see if I want to say anything about book two. I think well, that's a tough decision, because this will be a nice short video if I stop it here, but I could try and race through book two. But I think I like book two, actually. I think there's a lot of interesting things that go into there, so maybe for the next video, I'll talk about books 2, 3, and 2 and 3, and maybe 4. But yeah, let's do that. Alright, so we're on our way through the Iliad now. We've just talked about book 1, so there you have it. And I hope that made sense, and I hope it was worth your while, so we'll be seeing you soon, and there's plenty more where this came from. So thanks again, and take care.